Welcome to W5. There's an old expression, never let the truth get in the way of a good story. It's particularly taken to heart in Hollywood, where the only truth that matters seems to be the bottom line. And the picture that is cleaning up this year at the box office and at the awards is Argo, the inspired by real event story of American hostages in Iran and a bold rescue plan led by audacious Americans. Too bad it isn't completely true. The 1979 Iran hostage crisis was a time of huge trauma for Americans, with their embassy staff held hostage for hundreds of days. And the bold rescue plan? The work of Canadians who hid our American friends and took the risk of smuggling them out of the country. Forget the real story. The real story, as Victor Mallory tells us, is better than any Hollywood drama. But apparently not if you are courting American theater audiences.
It's that time of year again, folks. Awards season. And Ben Affleck's movie Argo has been cleaning up.
This is the one that counts.
At the Critics' Choice Awards.
Ben sweeps not one, but two major categories.
Best director is...
Best picture is...
Ben Affleck.
Argo.
And the Golden Globes.
This next film is the amazing true story inspired by the most important movie never made. A plan devised by this man. Real-life CIA agent and hero, Tony Mendez.
An audacious CIA plan to smuggle 6 Americans out of revolutionary Iran, posing as a Canadian film crew.
I want to set up a production company and build a cover around making a movie.
So you want to come to Hollywood and act like a big shot?
Yeah.
Without actually doing anything?
No.
You'll fit right in.
The Golden Globe goes to Ben Affleck, Argo. And the Golden Globe goes to Argo.
Really, this award is about Tony Mendez. You saw him up here earlier. He's an American hero.
There were real Canadian heroes as well. In 1979, when Islamic militants stormed the U.S. Embassy, they seized 52 Americans hostage. But 6 managed to escape, kept safe by Canadian embassy staff for months, and spirited out of Iran by Canadians, with a little help from the CIA.
On TV this morning.
Canada's ambassador to Iran, Ken Taylor, became for a time the most famous diplomat in the world.
Well, can we have your autograph?
This story from W5 circa 1980.
Everywhere he goes, someone stops the man who masterminded the escape of 6 Americans from Iran.
Was there CIA involvement? The handling of the exit of the 6 people was entirely in my hands and in my judgment.
Canadian government is now unveiling Taylor to the media. Next week will be filled with interviews and the beginning of a triumphant tour of the United States.
Taylor would go on to receive 112 honors and citations, including the U.S. Congressional Gold Medal. He was and remains the only Canadian recipient. Affleck's Argo uses and copies the look of historical footage, which lends it an air of authenticity. In press handouts, he explained it this way.
I did want to show these events in a very real, purely factual way. I knew the backstory, I knew the politics, I knew that I wasn't going to step on any landmines in that regard.
But when Argo premiered in September at the Toronto International Film Festival, Ben stepped on a landmine.
For Canadians, of course, Ken Taylor has been the hero of this story for as long as we've known the story. So this is a bit of a change.
I thought it was a fantastic film. What it was not was the story, the true story of what happened.
Les Harris would know. In 1980, he quit his job at W5 to make a documentary. Action! And a feature film about the Canadian rescue operation.
I wanted to dramatize what actually happened. And that's what I did.
Ken, it looks like they're holding the Americans prisoner.
Les Harris's movie was not based on a true story. It was the true story. Here's a scene.
Hey, we're really grateful for your taking us in. I know the risk you're running.
Listen, everybody, we just want you to know that Ken Taylor is doing everything possible to get you home.
But you'd never know it from Argo, where Taylor is portrayed as nothing more than a benign host, while the CIA reaps all the glory.
We need to pretend to be a movie crew.
Look, we don't know what the hell movie people do.
I'm going to help you. I'll be with you the whole way. This is what I do.
ignoring Canada's central role in the smoothly executed rescue, which made Argo's ending insufferably galling.
CIA are the good guys.
The Canadians are the good guys.
Yeah, we're not greedy, them too.
Only. Canada takes the credit or they retaliate against the hostages. No CIA.
Thank you, Canada.
Oh, like they didn't do anything?
They did nothing.
And the movie snidely implied that former Ambassador Ken Taylor did not deserve all the citations he received.
When that sort of flip comment was made, it stuck in the throat of many people who truly knew the story.
Ken Taylor was in Toronto on the eve of the premiere.
Were you invited for the...
No, I was curious. I was curious as to how they could make a movie without talking to the Canadians. Because Tony Mendez, as courageous and ingenious as is his character, was only there for essentially a day and a half.
So you're never called as a consultant to say, hey, could you tell us about this, or what was this like?
No, there was not one single word exchanged. Maybe in my dreams at 3 o'clock in the morning, but other than that, no.
Within hours of the closing credits, the jungle drums began to beat.
Some of my friends phoned me after seeing it, and then it began to percolate on Saturday morning that really Canada was a very minor player in the whole feature.
A lot of Canadians had steam coming out of their ears.
And then it sort of, you'd say, gathered storm. The press in Toronto, both Maclean's, the newspapers, what have you, did a story saying that one byline was Ben Affleck rewrites history.
Bad press for the heavily hyped movie. Within days, Ben was on the blower.
Ken Taylor, yes. Ambassador, yes, it's Ben. I'm thinking, I haven't met Ben. Let's see, Ben. Oh, I said, how are things in Hollywood? He said, fine. He said, I understand you have some issues. I said, yes, I've got some issues. From what I gather, I've not seen the movie.
So Taylor was whisked to L.A. for a private screening of Argo and a chat with Ben.
What strikes me first is there's a certain vacancy. There's lots of activity in Washington, but what about in Ottawa?
And action.
In the movie, you come across as a dignified background player.
I was expecting more of a G-man look.
I think you're thinking of the FBI, sir.
But your character hardly gets 10 lines.
This way.
After 3 months of the intensive preparation for the operation, I think my role was somewhat more than just opening and closing the front door of the embassy. And then particularly with the closing lines, which suggest that the Canadians really didn't deserve the citations.
That must have ticked you off.
I said to Beno, I said, that's just not acceptable. And then I sort of amusingly suggested that you've got a lot of people who are going to boycott this movie in Canada.
It was too late to change the movie, but Ben invited Taylor to write a postscript. Taylor generously wrote, "The involvement of the CIA complemented efforts of the Canadian Embassy in freeing the 6 held in Tehran." In October, with the help of his wife, actor Jennifer Garner, Affleck promoted Argo at a star-studded reception at the Canadian Embassy in Washington. This time, Ken Taylor and his wife Pat were invited.
For this to be a movie about the cooperation between two governments and the mutual appreciation there, I think that's extraordinary. It doesn't happen that much.
Ben was clearly playing to his audience. The tiff-tiff may have blown over, but Ken Taylor wasn't finished.
That wasn't the end of the story as far as I was concerned, as far as Canada was concerned. I mean, that's not the last statement I'm going to make about the movie.
Next, the story untold for over 3 decades.
I had no doubt that the Canadians would get us out.
But did Hollywood get it wrong?
Almost everything that was courageous was done by Canada, not by the United States.
In 1979, revolutionary Iran was a dangerous, bloody theocracy led by Ayatollah Khomeini. The historical backdrop for the Oscar favorite, Argo, a movie that uses authentic footage of 52 Americans brutally held hostage for 444 days.
We are in the only building with direct access to the street. If we're going to go, then we need to go now.
But the heart of Argo is the rescue of 6 other Americans, kept safe by kindly Canadians and smuggled home by CIA exfiltration expert Tony Mendez.
Now imagine this. They're a Canadian film crew on a location scout for a science fiction movie.
A movie called Argo.
I fly into Tehran. We all fly out together as a film crew.
That part of the story is true.
And here's the Hollywood Reporter. It's got that huge ad for Argo.
Mark and Cora Lyjak lived it and are portrayed in the movie.
Mark and Cora Lyjak, 2925.
2 of 6 escapees who ran from hideout to hideout until their boss, Bob Anders, called his friend John Sheardown at the Canadian Embassy. Les Harris was the first to interview them for his 1980 documentary.
And I'll never forget the first thing John said to me. Says, well, why didn't you call sooner? Says, come on over here. You can stay with us.
John Sheardown.
I immediately phoned Ken, Ambassador Taylor. I told him that we were expecting guests and invited him over.
Others had turned them away. Canadians, Sheardown, Taylor, and the government of Joe Clark never hesitated.
It's confirmed, sir. 6 escaped.
Where are they? The Canadian ambassador's house.
The movie has all 6 refugees staying at Ambassador Taylor's house, when, in fact, John Sheardown and his wife Zena courageously hid 4 of them for 3 months, putting themselves in danger.
The scariest time was the week we were on our own before we reached the Sheardowns. Frankly, once we got settled in to John's house, I had no doubt that the Canadians would get us out.
John and Zena Sheardown, great hosts.
We wanted for nothing. John would go out and buy cigarettes for me on the black market, and there was plenty of liquid refreshment and food. They made it a point to spread the shopping around, not go to one store and buy a ton of stuff because they were afraid that would look funny.
They were very careful about raising red flags.
Yes. They took very good care of us. And then on a daily basis, when John would come home after work, he would tell us what was going on basically in the outside, and we'd all sit down and have a formal dinner together. It was like being in a family, actually.
But a family facing the risk of discovery, dramatized in Les Harris's 1981 movie, Escape from Iran, the Canadian caper.
Good morning, Mr. Effie.
This Mr. Bade. You're a garbage man. Mr. Bade says you have too much garbage all at once.
John employed a gardener who was sympathetic to and perhaps a member of the local revolutionary committee, and we had to be careful to hide from him. And as far as the garbage man, he would demand a bribe if he found a liquor bottle.
Would you please distribute this to the other garbage men?
The hospitality, the security, taking great pains to make sure we weren't compromised. I mean, all those things were tremendously important.
And at risk.
Yes, yes. I mean, risking their own people.
John Sheardown's wife, Zena, was especially vulnerable, according to Les Harris.
Zena Sheardown, remember,
was not a diplomat.
She was not a diplomat.
Had she got caught,
she would have been shot. I'm convinced of that.
Secretly, Ottawa and the RCMP were preparing cover documents to make the American house guests credible Canadians. Driver's licenses, health cards, even pocket litter like shopping receipts, maple leaf pins, a molten Canadian keychain, and most important of all, doctored Canadian passports, all couriered to Ken Taylor in Iran via diplomatic pouch.
So you had everything in place, so...
Everything.
Until the CIA, in charge of forging their exit visas, made a big mistake. It got the dates wrong. A potentially fatal error, discovered by Canadian Embassy employee Roger Lucy, who could read Farsi.
What would have happened at the Tehran airport if Roger Lucy had not discovered the flaw dates and the CIA visa forgeries?
Well, that could have been the end of it all. The immigration officer would have looked at the passport and he said, "Oh, you left before you arrived."
Could have killed us. I mean, the whole operation.
Meanwhile, Ken Taylor was running a separate, much riskier operation, one he kept secret for 30 years. The CIA could provide no intelligence from Iran. Its agents were among the hostages. Ken Taylor became their man in Tehran, a de facto Canadian CIA station chief.
I imagine how it worked in Ottawa as President Carter contacted Prime Minister and asked if they could station one CIA officer in our embassy, and then asked if Sergeant Jim Edwards, who was there with the military police, could be assigned to this group as well.
Sergeant Jim Edwards conducted daily surveillance of the U.S. Embassy and reported to Taylor, who would dispatch the information in encrypted cables.
Providing intelligence that would lead to a raid by the commandos.
But there was a moment where Jim Edwards got himself into a jackpot.
That was probably the worst moment.
While gathering intelligence, Edwards was arrested by militants and interrogated for 5 hours.
If during an intensive interrogation something would have slipped inadvertently or what have you, there would have gone the 6, with the consequences to our staff.
If the Iranians had broken Jim Edwards and the consequences of, you being a CIA operative in the background.
The Iranians would quite rightly, that's a diplomat, a treasonable offense. And this is a country helping to prepare an invasion of their own country.
Were you ever scared?
Well, I was pretty tense during that time until finally he talked his way out and came back to the embassy at 1 in the morning.
You pull out the scotch?
Yeah, it's a big one.
A big one.
What about the White House? Carter shitting enough bricks to build the pyramids. The Canadians are done. Say they're bearing too much risk.
The movie claims the Canadians got cold feet at the last minute.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
Jimmy Carter, America's president during the hostage crisis, doesn't remember them either. In Kingston in November to receive an honorary degree from Queen's University, he slammed the movie.
I saw the movie Argo recently, Ken, and I was taken aback by its distortion of what happened. Because almost everything that was heroic or courageous or innovative was done by Canada and not by the United States.
The whole existence of the Canadian Embassy in Tehran came to be focused on our survival and eventual departure, and that is almost, I'd have to say, unprecedented and certainly in modern diplomatic history.
Does it bother you that the Canadians who basically saved your bacon got fleeting reference in this film, that short shrift?
We were really sad that the characters of John and Zena Sheardown weren't in the film.
They were the heroes as far as we're concerned. I mean, there were many, but if I had to pick one person, I would pick John.
John Sheardown died in Ottawa in January.
For so many Canadians, I guess what they find galling is that Argo has taken on the force of reality. It's that thing where only Americans can be heroes in an American film.
Well, I think what Canadians have to understand is that the movie is about Tony Mendez. That's why the hero is the American, and yet the Canadians did so much.
I'm the producer. Nice to meet you.
And yet so much of Argo is complete fiction. Take the scene where they go on a fake location scout at the bazaar and get in a jam there. Never happened.
I want to do just one more with no talking from Razor, just walking in.
No, we would have been suicidal to go to the bazaar at that point.
Take the movie's edge of your seat ending at the airport, where their Hollywood cover story is challenged.
You don't go until we verify.
That never happened. Where their plane is chased down the runway by police and Revolutionary Guards, yet lifts off in the nick of time. Didn't happen. The 6 flew to safety without a hitch. There's high excitement outside the historic Arlington Theater in Santa Barbara, where Ben Affleck has arrived to claim yet another award. Red carpets are not normally my thing, yet here I am at the Santa Barbara Film Festival in California, hoping to get a word in with Argo's director and star. But being a humble Canadian,
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I'm stuck at the end of the line.
W5 had asked for an interview with Ben Affleck, but his Hollywood handlers told us he was just too busy. So, like everyone else here, I've become a star stalker.
Thank you.
One question here. Ben from Toronto, Canada.
Hello.
Hi. I just wanted to ask you, there's a lot of criticism about Argo and the Canadians who helped the escape of the American diplomats. They're saying that they got kind of shortchanged on it. What's your response to that?
Oh my God. I mean, this movie is really about a giant thank you to Canada, our friends in Canada who did such an extraordinary job. And that story, which has been known for, 30 years, is accurate. And it praises, Ken Taylor and others, including the Sheardowns. In fact, my real, regret is that John and Zena Sheardown's story is not in the movie. Unfortunately, we couldn't put everything in there. But one of the really nice things about this movie was the spirit of camaraderie and brotherhood and companionship that developed between the United States and Canada.
Thanks a lot.
Canadians, it might be best to park your Argo outrage and take a tip from film critic Leonard Maltin.
I will say this, as I say to everybody, don't get your history from the movies.
And proof that fiction is good business. Argo has been in theaters since Thanksgiving, an exceptionally long run for any film, and its box office take has now exceeded $200 million.